The medical bay on Stellaris Outpost had treated plasma wounds, vacuum burns, cracked exosuits, and worse. But it had never treated this. The tension wasn't coming from alarms, or blood, or failing monitors. It was coming from 6 cubs. They formed a living ring around the recovery bed like a wall with teeth, fur bristling, ears angled, eyes tracking every motion in the room. In the center of them all lay Nora Venn, human engineer, stubborn survivor, and currently the reason the entire bay had learned to breathe quietly. Her torso was wrapped in regenerative bandages that shimmered faintly under the lights. The burns along her left side should have ended her. But humans, Dr. Callis had learned, didn't subscribe to the galaxy's idea of should. Callis stood at the entrance with his medical scanner held low, palms open, voice carefully gentle. "I need to check her vitals," he said, as if speaking to a nest of half-tamed storm cats. At the foot of the bed, the eldest cub, Toren, pulled his lips back and let out a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plating. Callis stopped. Toren didn't. He stood like a sentry, shoulders squared, developing fangs visible, gaze fixed on Callis's hands. It would have been frightening enough if Toren were an animal. But Toren wasn't an animal. He was Vikari. His species was known across the spiral arms for diplomacy, scholarship, patience, calm voices and measured words. And right now, Toren looked ready to bite through a bulkhead. From the bed, Nora's voice rasped out, rough with pain and dry air. "It's okay." She shifted, winced, and immediately regretted moving. 3 cubs rushed to her side with tiny worried chirps, small bodies pressing close, as if their warmth could glue her back together. Toren didn't move. Nora tried again, more firm. Toren, down. Toren's ears flattened, but his stance remained. Not disobedient. Protective. Callis swallowed carefully. He'd treated 17 predator species. He understood guarding instincts. What unsettled him was the way Toren's guarding didn't feel instinctive. It felt chosen. Callis lifted the scanner slightly. Toren's growl deepened. Nora exhaled a shaky breath and forced herself to meet Toren's eyes. "Let him do his job," she said, softer now. "Please." That word landed like a command and a plea in one. Toren stepped sideways. Reluctantly. Still watching. Still ready. Callis approached 1 step at a time. A smaller cub, Luma, barely more than fluff and oversized ears, pressed against Nora's leg and hissed, a sound so similar to Earth cats that it almost made Callis laugh. Almost. He kept his voice quiet. "Thank you," he murmured, not to Nora. To the cubs. The scanner hovered over Nora's chest. Readings pulsed across Callis's display. "Calcium levels depleted," he said. "Bone density compromised." He glanced at Nora, disbelief creeping into his tone before he smothered it. "You should be in agonizing pain." Nora gave a weak, crooked smile. "I am," she said. "I'm just really good at not showing it." At the bay entrance, the door slid open again, slow, careful, like the station itself was scared to make noise. A Vikari administrator stepped inside. Commander Jalen. Silver-streaked fur. Ceremonial markings. Authority in every measured movement. The cubs didn't care. 2 of them shifted immediately between him and Nora, forming a silent, bristling barrier. Jalen didn't push. He lowered himself slightly, making his posture smaller, voice quiet as dust. "Doctor," he greeted. "How is she?" Callis didn't take his eyes off the cubs. "Alive," he said carefully. "And guarded." Jalen's expression tightened with something that looked like shame. "The attack happened in Residential Section 7, he said. Callis kept scanning, letting Jalen's words fill the room. 3 Krell raiders breached the shelter during evacuation, Jalen continued. They found the cubs hiding in a storage room. His ears drooped. Nora was returning from an engineering shift. She heard them crying. Nora tried to speak, but Toren leaned closer to her like a warning. Like, save your breath. Jalen went on quietly. She took a plasma rifle meant for someone twice her size. Callis's scanner chimed. He stared at Nora's shoulder structure and hissed under his breath. The recoil should have shattered her. Nora managed a tiny shrug. "It wasn't my first bad idea," she muttered. Jalen's voice didn't shift, but the grief under it sharpened. She killed 2 raiders and drove the 3rd into retreat. When security arrived, they found her collapsed in front of the storage room door. He paused. The cubs were untouched. The room went still. Even the monitors seemed quieter, as if they understood. Nora stared at the ceiling. "I just did what anyone would do." Jalen's eyes held hers. "No," he said, quiet and absolute. "You did what a human would do." A chime sounded at the door, another request for entry. Callis flinched, and so did the cubs. The door slid open. Lieutenant Corvex, security chief, stepped inside like he owned oxygen. His voice boomed out of him before he remembered where he was. "Commander, we've completed the investigator." 6 cubs erupted. Torren lunged forward, body snapping into place between Corvex and Nora. Luma climbed onto the bed itself, shaking with aggression. 2 more cubs formed a wall shoulder to shoulder, fur spiked, teeth flashing. It wasn't chaos. It was discipline. A coordinated defense. Corvex froze mid-step, forearms raised. "What in the—" "Lower your voice," Jalen snapped. "Sharp. Controlled. Quiet." Corvex blinked, realized his mistake, and dropped his tone immediately. The change was instant. Like a switch. The cubs didn't relax. But the snarling stopped. The air loosened by half a breath. Callis stared at his data. Then stared harder. "Their stress hormones spike specifically in response to raised voices near Nora," he said, stunned. He turned the scanner slightly, watching the patterns match the moment. They formed a trauma-bonded protective unit with her at the center. Torren's eyes never left Corvex. "She saved our lives," Torren said suddenly. His voice was young, but the conviction inside it wasn't. "When the bad ones came, she stood in front of us." He looked up at Nora, eyes holding too much understanding for someone who still counted his age in cycles. "She got hurt protecting us." Nora swallowed. Her throat tightened. "No one will hurt her while we're here," Torren said. And the others chirped agreement, soft, fierce sounds that felt like a vow. Nora reached up slowly and brushed Torren's head with trembling fingers. "Hey," she whispered. "No one here wants to hurt me." Torren didn't answer. He didn't need to. His body said it for him. "We don't care. We guard anyway." Jalen stepped closer, slow, respectful, then knelt at the cub's level. "Your parents are being brought back from the frontier," he said softly. "You'll see them soon." Luma's ears flicked. "But Nora needs rest," Jalen continued. "Proper medical care." Luma piped up in a tiny voice. "We'll be quiet." Then she added, with complete seriousness, "We'll be the quietest." Callis almost smiled. Almost. Torren didn't budge. "We're not leaving," Torren said. And they didn't. Over the following weeks, the medical bay learned new rules. Rule 1, approach slowly. Rule 2, speak softly. Rule 3, never raise your voice near Noraven, unless you wanted 6 furious cubs to remind you what consequences felt like. The first day a technician forgot and laughed too loudly. Torren's head snapped up so fast the tech nearly dropped a tray. The cubs didn't attack. They didn't need to. They simply stood, bristling, eyes hard. The technician whispered an apology and backed away like a guilty child. Nora watched it all with tired amusement. "I'm not a fragile artifact," she murmured one day. Torren blinked at her. Then sat even closer. Physical therapy became a group activity. When Nora struggled through painful exercises, 6 cubs mirrored her. Clumsy little stretches. Determined little lifts. Tiny paws moving like they were training beside their pack leader. When Nora collapsed back onto the mat, sweating and shaking, The cubs chirped encouragement like drill sergeants who had learned kindness. Again, Toren would say. Nora would groan. Again, Luma would echo, like it was a song. And somehow, Nora would get up again. There were moments, too, small ones, that cracked the bay's tension into something warm. One night Nora drifted half asleep and mumbled, "You guys are ridiculous." Toren adjusted a blanket with surprising care. "We learn from you," he said simply. And that was the problem. Because the cubs weren't guarding her out of instinct. They were guarding her out of memory. Then came the day their parents arrived. The bay doors slid open, and two adult Vikari entered, faces tight with relief and fear. Toren's mother took one step toward him, eyes shining. "My cub," she whispered. Toren looked at her. Then looked at Nora. And didn't move. His mother reached again. Gentle. "Toren, your human doesn't need guarding anymore. She's safe." Toren's paws planted harder against the floor. "I need to guard her," he said, as if the sentence was self-evident. His mother's ears drooped. "Toren." Toren's voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "She stood in front of the bad ones for us," he said. "So we stand in front of everyone for her." He glanced at his siblings, and they tightened the ring around Nora without being told. "That's how pack works," Toren finished. Nora's eyes stung. She tried to speak, tried to tell them she wasn't their pack, she wasn't their den, she was just a human who did what was necessary. But then she saw the way Toren watched the door. Not scared. Not angry. Just determined. Like the universe had given him a rule worth keeping. Nora exhaled softly. "They can visit," she told Toren's mother, voice gentle. "Whenever they want." Toren's mother looked torn between gratitude and disbelief. Jalen stepped in quietly. "Not just visit," he corrected. He looked at Nora with respect. "Honor guard." The words settled over the room like a mantle. 6 cubs. 1 human. Pack. 4 years after, Nora Venn carried a strange distinction on Stellaris Outpost. Humans were known for survival. For stubbornness. For running toward danger when logic screamed to run away. But Nora became known for something else. She was the only human in known space who walked with a permanent Vikari honor guard, 6 cubs who grew into proud adults. And never forgot the lesson she carved into their bones. When the world came to take them, she stood first. So now, anyone who raised their voice around her learned something too. Not fear. Not violence. Just a simple truth. You don't threaten someone the pack protects. Not ever. Because the cubs were watching. And they would not hesitate to step in front of her. The way she once stepped in front of them.